Hi everyone. Hello from Japan. Konnichiwa. Well, I'm actually not in Japan. I'm actually in my friend Billy Harris's garden at the historic Holly Gate. But this is their beautiful bamboo forest. So I'm excited to introduce our Saturday night program, which is going to be about setting up the production of the Barbie doll with Charlotte Johnson in Japan. So I just want you to use your imagination, and we're just going to pretend to be in Japan for this evening. And this wonderful bamboo is actually going to play a little bit of a role in the production of the Barbie wardrobe in 1959. I bet if you think about it, you'll figure out what it is. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the program, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with you later. Have a great evening. In 1957, as Jack Ryan prepared for a trip overseas to Japan, he was approached by Ruth Handler, co-founder of Mattel, with the Build Lily doll. She slipped it into his briefcase and asked him to see if he could have something similar produced in that country. Creating the Barbie doll was a major undertaking. It would take several sculptors, engineers, and manufacturing know-how to produce a rotationally cast vinyl doll. With the production of the doll figured out, the doll's wardrobe was proving to be more of a problem. 2 designers had been hired and let go, proving unsuccessful at being able to create a wardrobe of fashion and not doll clothing. At the suggestion of a friend, Ruth and Elliot Handler visited Chouinard Art Institute. At Chouinard, they were introduced to Charlotte Johnson. Charlotte had been a designer of women's wear, ready-to-wear, juniors wear, and she had a knowledge of sculpting, painting, and manufacturing. Ruth and Charlotte discovered that they had previously met at an advertising party. They would meet later at a local cafe close to Charlotte Johnson's apartment and discuss what would need to be created for this doll. In Ruth's words, she would provide Charlotte with a laundry list of ensembles that the doll would need: day wear, evening wear, casual wear, and a wedding dress. Charlotte would work on these ensembles for the doll in her apartment in Hollywood, California. Ruth would stop by in the evenings after work to check on the progress. Charlotte would visit the May Company department store in Los Angeles for some needed supplies to create samples for the Barbie doll. With the samples successfully produced, Ruth Handler would visit Charlotte and let her in on the next phase of the project. She would need to travel to Japan to help set up the production for the wardrobe. Prior to leaving for Japan, Charlotte would travel back to the May department store and select a collection of Vogue sewing patterns. These were not for technical reference, but more for inspiration. Charlotte felt that once a style had been produced in a commercial pattern, it was widely understood by the public. And I know you're asking, well, how does he know that? Well, her design assistant in Japan, Fumiko Miyatsuka, documented all of this in a book about her career dressing dolls with Charlotte Johnson and her history with the Mattel Barbie doll. One other bit of design inspiration that Charlotte carried with her was this issue of Vogue magazine. Charlotte would depart from Los Angeles International Airport en route to Japan in the summer of 1958. She was traveling jet service, which was a novel thing in 1958. She would arrive in Tokyo. This image is from the KLM service counter at Tokyo's airport. It's from 1958. It's interesting to see how modern it is and the color. Charlotte was greeted at the Tokyo airport by the gentleman from Kokusai Boeki Kaishi Limited. This was the company that Mattel had selected to do the production of both the Barbie doll and the wardrobe. She was introduced to Fumiko Miyatsuka as a lady who could sew. Fumiko would be Charlotte's design assistant in Japan. They would set up a laboratory creating these wonderful garments for Barbie at the Imperial Hotel, which had been designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. This lavish hotel had been built in the 1920s. However, it had been added onto and expanded over the following decades, including a larger tower that had been built post-war. These are some postcards from the Imperial Hotel showing the Frank Lloyd Wright designed furniture, the color, the architecture, and the style. It's interesting just to see what Charlotte would have been seeing while she stayed in Japan. This was a rather nice hotel to be staying in. However, keep in mind, Charlotte was going to be staying here for almost a year. Charlotte's hotel room had an adjoining boardroom that they used as the design lab. It had a table, several chairs, and an additional powder room. Keep in mind there is one sort of issue that Charlotte and Fumiko are going to have to work with. Charlotte speaks no Japanese. Fumiko speaks no English. Frank Nakamura, who accompanied Charlotte to Japan, would serve sometimes as a translator. However, Charlotte and Fumiko would learn to communicate through hand gestures, drawings, and just an overall understanding of the project at hand. These are excerpts from Fumiko's book showing some of the earliest styles that were created for the Barbie doll. These vintage designs are shown on replica dolls and are part of Fumiko's collection. Some of the styles you look at and can pretty much see why they were not selected for production. However, some of them when you see, you wonder why they were not selected. Fumiko said that this was the formula that was utilized for designing for Barbie, TPO, time, place, and occasion, the time of day that the garment would be worn, where the outfit would be worn, and for what occasion the doll would be wearing it. It was a great formula that really helped them discover that they were not just designing for a doll, but designing for a miniature person. If you do not have Fumiko's book, I highly suggest adding it to your collection. Although it's written entirely in Japanese, it has some wonderful photographs and color images of vintage Barbie fashions that were never selected for the line that are a feast for the eyes. Let's talk about Barbie's wardrobe. Here is an image of two Jansen swimsuits from the 1950s. Notice the stripes, notice the gold hoop earrings. Well, now you can see some inspiration. Prior to Barbie, most dolls were either sold in their lingerie or dressed. The idea of dressing Barbie in a swimsuit was pretty novel. The good thing about it is it created an instant play pattern. If you got nothing but the doll could be going to the pool, going to the beach, or laying out in the sun. And those wonderful little detailed accessories, the sunglasses, the gold hoop earrings, and the open-toe pumps, well, those were just a little taste of what you could get with the rest of the wardrobe. Charlotte Johnson brought a level of genius to creating for Barbie. Here is the original black and white striped swimsuit that the doll came dressed in. On the right, the black image is of the actual pattern. The swimsuit is cut in one piece of fabric and essentially has one seam. Fumiko would play a very active role in creating the wardrobe for the Barbie doll. She knitted several miniature sweaters and garments for the doll, of which Charlotte selected a cardigan and a shell to be part of the wardrobe. Fumiko then communicated to the knitting mill that would produce the sweaters. Nomeriasu Knitting Mill, which actually produced hosiery and socks, would produce an order of 250,000 pieces of this little sweater. While 250,000 pieces may sound like a very generous number, keep in mind that they reordered on this 3 more times. The end result was the sweater girl outfit for Barbie. This bright orange sweater and shell with gray flannel skirt was perfect for her wardrobe. Here is a photo from the era. Elliot Handler is in the center. On his left, Seymour Adler, an engineer at Mattel. On his right, Frank Nakamura, another engineer and a gentleman who would help set up the production in Japan. On either end of the photo are the gentlemen from Kokusai Boeki Limited. One of these gentlemen I believe to be Mr. Hiroi, who took Charlotte around to find fabrics throughout Tokyo. Charlotte discovered that the appropriate fabrics were difficult to find. Fabric in the right weight, scale, and texture were not in abundance. She turned to children's wear fabric producers for many of Barbie's original fabrics. Frank Nakamura was very instrumental in getting the Barbie doll production set up in Japan. A Japanese American, he was fluent in the language and often would serve as a translator for Charlotte. Here's a street scene from 1958. It gives you an opportunity to put yourself in Charlotte's shoes and take a glimpse at the colors, the styles, and just the overall city of Tokyo that she was seeing while she was there to create for the Barbie doll. This image from a film shows the doll department of a department store in Tokyo. It's fun to see the display, the color, and the style. One of Fumiko's recollections was the difficulty that she and Charlotte experienced trying to find an appropriate lace for a garment. I suspect it to be Plantation Belle. When they couldn't find the appropriate lace, they found themselves in the lingerie department of a department store, and Charlotte purchased a slip that had the appropriate lace. When they got back to the hotel, Charlotte used her scissors and cut the lace from the slip and threw the remaining part of the garment away. This was shocking to Fumiko, as the cost of the slip had been as much as 1 week's salary. Fumiko states that that's the moment when she realized just how important this project was. And what I can tell you is making the Plantation Belle dress is not that easy. I attempted to recreate one just so I would have an understanding of how the patterns and the garments came together for the original 1959 wardrobe. You'll find a bit of Japan in every one of Barbie's outfits. Yes, they were made there, but many different Japanese companies contributed to the production. Many of the artificial flowers were supplied by Hiroshi Fukushima, which is the legendary silk flower manufacturer. My favorite story of creation for Fumiko and Charlotte was how they came up with the idea for the hat for Suburban Shopper. Having looked for ideas and inspiration, they were kind of at a loss. But when lunch was served and they looked at the tray, the lid to the rice bowl proved to be an adequate form for creating a hat. They wet some straw cloth and stretched it across the lid to this bowl and secured it with a rubber band and created this hat. The sink in the powder room also proved to be the inspiration for one of the hats. Seeing that the spigot was the same size as Barbie's head, a piece of straw cloth was secured to the spigot and secured with a rubber band. That hat would become the hat for picnic set. The picnic hat is trimmed with red bias tape, some artificial flowers, and a cute little plastic frog. On one outing, Charlotte and Fumiko would travel to the factory where the dolls were being produced. They would get to see a tour of the plant at how the dolls were being molded and the hair was being sewn into the heads. The production of the Barbie wardrobe is fairly unique. Some of the garments were manufactured in factories, some of which were created by home sewers. Charlotte would instruct Fumiko as to the way that she wanted the garment produced. Fumiko would in turn tell her team leaders how the outfit was to be produced. And that was about 25 people. Those team leaders would then instruct all of the other sewers how the garment was to be created. They took great pride in the quality and the creation of these little garments. Here's just a little scene of what those factories would have looked like. Another problem for the Barbie doll? She needed a purse, but it didn't need to cost a lot of money. Struggling to create something that wouldn't be expensive, Fumiko came up with the idea of some cardboard, some straw cloth, and some string to create the little tote that would come with Suburban Shopper. This same principle was applied to the picnic basket for the picnic set outfit and some other purses as well. Dai Nippon Plastics produced many of the celluloid-style items for the Barbie wardrobe, including the fish and Barbie's tiny sunglasses. One thing that Japan has in abundance is bamboo. Barbie's cane fishing pole from the picnic set outfit was made with a tiny sprig of bamboo. This tiny little piece would have probably been considered rubbish and probably cost practically nothing, but this wonderful accessory was an important part of this creative costume. Do you recognize this pattern? Well, it's for one of the most hard to find early Barbie doll fashions. It's the coat for the Easter Parade 1959 outfit for Barbie. Originally envisioned in white, it was produced in black because they felt that the white fabric would soil too quickly. The pattern pieces for the Barbie wardrobe were transferred into dies so they could be die cut with a hydraulic press. The little shape in the bottom left hand of your screen is for a sleeve. A lot of attention was paid to how the fabric and pattern pieces would be laid out, ensuring there would be minimal waste. Here is the pattern for the apple print sheath that also came with the Easter Parade outfit. 3 pattern pieces make up this form-fitting dress. One of the most amazing details to this early Barbie wardrobe are the tiny zippers that were used in the backs of some of the dresses. If you look closely at these zippers, you'll see embossed in the zipper pull YKK. That stands for Yoshida Kogyo Kubushiki Kaisha. This Japanese company would produce the zippers for Mattel, and it was the first time that their size 0 zipper was put into use. One of the things a designer doesn't like to hear is quota, meaning that you have to order a certain number of yards of fabric, and it has to be used in multiple ways across the line. Here are a few details that Charlotte figured out early on to ensure that the things that she wanted would have multiple uses. Barbie's gold hoop earrings would also be the gold hoop that secures the ribbon to Barbie's ponytail in her little nightie. It is also the ring that holds the closure for the corduroy purse for evening splendor. The same cording that's used for the purse is also the same cording for the handle for the cane fishing pole. Here's the original wardrobe that together Fumiko and Charlotte created. Even by today's standards, it's amazing. There's an outfit for every occasion. One of the things I've always loved as a collector is a mystery. On the original box for the Barbie doll is an orange shift dress. It was originally envisioned to be produced, however, it never made it into the line. On the right is the original sample that was created by Charlotte and Fumiko in Japan. It would later be recreated for a 2009 souvenir doll for the Barbie convention. I'm sure after several months in Japan, Charlotte was tired and wanted to sleep in her own bed, and she was ready to head back to the US. And what a sense of accomplishment she must have felt, seeing her designs and her creation on the cover of the Mattel toy catalog. And then watching her creations be filmed for the Barbie commercial. And then imagine getting to see that commercial on national television. I think she returned home and she was very proud and very much had a sense of accomplishment. But her work was just beginning. She was going to now have to manage the department and hire new designers to help with this project. Charlotte would become the manager of the department and sometimes be referred to as Barbie's wardrobe mistress. She would oversee the designers and select the line each year for Barbie's wardrobe. She often became the face of the Barbie design department, being the one who would be interviewed anytime the press showed up. She would be mentioned by name in early issues of the Barbie newsletter, being referred to as Miss Charlotte Johnson. However, the Miss was a moniker as she had been twice divorced. And her focus wasn't just on the Barbie clothing, it was also on the Barbie doll and creating improvements for it. Charlotte Johnson holds the patent for the rooted eyelash method for the mod-era Barbie dolls. And if she ever felt a sense of accomplishment, it had to come in 1974, when the Barbie doll, which was now a $20 million business, was declared to be the largest manufacturer of women's apparel. When the production of the Barbie wardrobe shifted from Japan, Fumiko would find work with other doll manufacturing companies. She would design for Leica and ultimately the Jenny doll. She did, however, preserve everything that she and Charlotte created that was left behind when Charlotte took the original samples to the United States. These magnificent samples are just a peek into the creative mind and genius that Charlotte Johnson was and what could have been. Now retired and in her late 80s, Fumiko Miyatsuka has a prized collection of Barbies that she has shared at Barbie conventions and around the world. She recently exhibited some of her collection in Yokohama. In an article about her in the 1990s, it showed some samples that are pretty amazing, including a pink version of Red Flare, and these other samples which show the blouse to Busy Gal in the polka dots. Charlotte would continue at Mattel, with production shifting from Japan to Hong Kong to Taiwan and the Philippines. In 1978, Mattel would bestow her with this gold Barbie doll as an award for 20 years of service. In 1980, she would announce her retirement and leave Mattel. I've often wondered if Charlotte understood the magnitude that was the Barbie doll. Yes, she saw its successes, but as an icon, I just hope that for one moment she understood that. When she traveled to Japan in the summer of 1958, she and Fumiko traveled with some of Fumiko's friends to a festival for Tanabata. They stood out in a field and gazed at the stars. I often think that maybe she made a wish upon one of those stars that this project would be successful. After leaving Mattel in 1980, Charlotte would have the onsets of early Alzheimer's, and she would live in a memory care facility for the rest of her life. She would pass away in 1997. She's interred at the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Omaha, Nebraska. At the memorial service for Charlotte Johnson, Ruth Handler delivered the eulogy. She said many could have done what Charlotte did. No one could have done it better. And I believe this really speaks to the contribution that Charlotte made throughout her career. Charlotte would guide the Barbie brand for more than 2 decades. She would see Mattel go through its highs and its lows. I love this photograph of her from 1977, shown here with Marie Osmond and Donny Osmond as they prepared to produce the Donny Marie dolls. Charlotte's legendary design techniques are still used by some of the designers today. She's an inspiration not only to the Barbie designers, but designers around the world. She truly created an icon.